Those were live proceedings straight from the East London Magistrates Court that has just taken a short adjournment for 10 minutes at the mitigating of sentence procedures in the case, of course, of EFF leader Julius Malema, who was found guilty on various charges stemming from his discharging of a firearm during his party's rally. So yesterday and today, we saw those presentations ahead of his sentencing, and as part, of course, of legal processes, the defense can present their submissions so as to try and convince the court to be more lenient in its final decision on the sentence. We are expecting some further analysis as well as reaction shortly. But while we get ready for that, let's first give you a quick reminder of how this matter actually came about. It was the organization AfriForum that had initially brought the case to the fore under the Firearms Control Act back in 2018. And the country, remember, had gone through the COVID pandemic, and it found its momentum the last few years with his trial hogging headlines, if you remember, last year. Now, Julius Malema was found guilty of the following charges. 1, the unlawful possession of a firearm. 2, the unlawful possession of ammunition. 3, discharging a firearm in a built-up or public area. 4, reckless endangerment of people or property. And 5, failure to take reasonable precautions so as to avoid danger to person or property. That, of course, relates to him as well as his bodyguard, Mr. Snyman. Now, just for further context, now, Section 13 of the Firearms Control Act actually stipulates that it is an offense to discharge a firearm in public or in a built-up area or in any manner that is likely to endanger people or property. And this carries a possible sentence of up to 15 years, though there is, of course, no mandatory minimum, meaning that the court still has sole discretion to decide on the relevant sentence. A very good afternoon. We're going to take you back to the court as soon as those proceedings continue. But let's turn our attention to this now. I did promise you some analysis. Let's now welcome Legal Analyst, Mr. Melusi Xulu, to also just give us a brief overview of the mitigating of sentence proceedings. Melusi, a very good afternoon to you. We do appreciate your time with us. So please enlighten some of us who are very concerned and confused, I suppose. In normal cases, how long does the mitigation or how does the mitigation of sentencing procedures actually work? Is it normal, what we have seen with regards to Julius Malema? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, Alicia, and to the viewer at home. Thank you for having me. Well, in most cases, it would depend on the seriousness of the offense and how he's trying to mitigate or she's trying to mitigate. Where for the first time, or for instance, when he's mitigating, he might have a social worker who will come with the pre-sentencing report and some recommendations, like we saw today. So when the social worker was presenting, she presented the reports, and then she was cross-examined or asked questions by the prosecution. And then also there was re-examination by Advocate Ngwaitobi, and then the court was also involved in the process. So depending on the seriousness of the offense, it might take longer, such as we are seeing today. And obviously, the sentence that might be recommended, or the minimum sentence, is obviously 15 years. And therefore, there's an interest in making sure that if there are recommendations for mitigation, it must be done properly and adequately so that there can be a lesser sentence for Mr. Malema.
All right, so let's dig further into those submissions, Melusi, by his lawyers, right? Based on what you've heard during those presentations, are you convinced that he actually might avoid jail time completely? We heard quite a number of case references being made on similar matters in regards to his arguments for leniency. What do you surmise, sir?
I believe, look, when you come to sentencing, there's a case law or case that usually is presented or is mentioned as versus Zin. It says that when there's a sentencing happening, there are three things that we look at. We look at the interest of the society, we look at the personal circumstances of the accused, and we also look at the seriousness of the offense. And obviously, one will ask, is there real reason for Mr. Malema to be, imprisoned directly? What is his contribution to the society? So I believe that as much as we will say sentences must happen, the same way for everyone, but when you bring your personal circumstances and your reasons, it can be different and it can be lesser than sin. It's just that I'm looking at how the court was asking questions. I don't know whether she's convinced that it should be a fine or a lesser imprisonment, but we'll see when we come back. When we come back for sentencing, whether she'll be convinced. But as for me, I'm convinced that at least an imprisonment that is suspended, coupled with a fine, might be maybe a hefty fine, might be a proper deterrent, so to speak, for Mr. Malema and the society. But the discretion is with the magistrate at the end of the day, Alicia.
And I'm glad that you mentioned the magistrate, because the conduct of Mr. Julius Malema was quite a sore and sticking point, of course, during this mitigation processes, Melusi, whereby it was, of course, brought to the public that, of course, Mr. Malema had made serious allegations and references in regards to the judge. I'm sure you remember when he was very agitated, saying that the judge expects them to come to court early, but she arrives late and is not prepared. Let's talk about that. I mean, how does this then impact the overall, of course, mitigation of sentence against him by the sitting judge?
I think obviously if a judge is in this situation, or a magistrate in this instance, they might kind of, take it personally, which one would advise against. But if she's objective, maybe she might be of the belief that maybe Mr. Malema was not really behaving properly. But obviously, Mr. Malema was concerned with how she came late. And we know Mr. Malema, he is able to express himself the way he feels. And maybe that might not come, respectful to the magistrate. But like I said, I think the most important thing is for her to be objective and focus on what the law should provide, then being personal on how she might feel Mr. Malema treated her when he was expressing himself. But I do think that might be a factor that might be considered by her in her mind as well.
But I mean, the fact that it was also highlighted that he's completely shown no remorse and does not feel that he's done anything wrong throughout the entire process of trial, as well as, of course, mitigation of sentence. Do you think this could also heavily impact on his sentence, Melusi?
The unfortunate thing is that when you are doing a trial, you will plead not guilty. And from the moment you plead not guilty and you obviously litigate and fight the state's case, it may come across as if you are not remorseful about it. And when it's a time for sentencing, that is when you obviously now change and say, look, I was found guilty and I did not plead guilty. But be that as may be, I am remorseful. So maybe a person who is a magistrate or a judicial officer might be of the view that, look, if you are remorseful, you should have pleaded guilty from the first instance. So maybe that is why there might be an issue that he does not seem remorseful. But obviously, maybe the way, as you stated before in your previous question, the way he might have, spoken to her outside of court, obviously, because it was about the issues of paying late and postponement. Maybe those might be the things that she might consider. But obviously, remorse is important. There is no other way. You've been found guilty. Now that you've been found guilty, after pleading not guilty, you will then say, "Look, yes, I've been found not guilty, but I am remorseful, and I believe that what I did was wrong." But we know for a fact that in October, Alicia, Mr. Malema did say he's gonna appeal the conviction. It's just that the sentence has to happen first before he appeals the conviction and the sentence. So I think that is his approach. Maybe that might have come across as if, obviously, after being convicted, he does not believe he should have been convicted, because he's invited the legal gurus like Advocate Mwaitovi's SC. So obviously we know he's going to appeal, whether it's a sentence that is light. is going to appeal the conviction and the sentence.
Quite contradictory to what he said when he made reference after being found guilty that, in fact, going to jail would be a badge of honor for him. While we're on the legal team and heavyweights there, Melusi, his legal team says Malema wasn't intent on shooting to kill people in a violent manner and that this was done through celebratory means. And I'm sure you heard, of course, that the magistrates there questioning this and saying, what's the difference? Are we then, what is the perception that is supposed to be derived from that? And she even went as far as making an example to say that, are you then saying or suggesting that anybody can just pull out a gun because it's their birthday and shoot without any regard in any public manner? So this might be quite a costly submission, especially on his legal team's part.
Yeah, that is why in the Firearms Control Act, there's a reason why certain acts are offences. Discharging a firearm in a well-built area in public, reckless endangerment, whether you are celebrating or just discharging for the sake of it. When you do that, it's unlawful. And we know for a fact that sometimes even if you shoot in the air or discharge a firearm, some people can be endangered by the bullets that come out of that. I think that's the experts can clarify that. So whether it was just a celebration or it's just discharging for the sake of it, it is wrong, and that is the law. And I think that is what the magistrate is saying, that as much as you can say it's a celebration, but when it comes to the law, in terms of the Firearms Control Act, I believe you did mention Section 13. It's unlawful, and once you've been found guilty of that, there is a sentence that must be meted out. But the question that is on our minds now is that when we come back on the next date, what sentence will the magistrate give to Mr. Malema?
I'm going to keep you with us there, Melusi. I just want to quickly take our viewers straight inside the East London, of course, Magistrates Court with SABC News reporter Abongile Jantjies, who's actually following the proceedings for us right inside there. He joins us on the line. So, Abongile, it's good to have you with us. I mean, what a lengthy 2 days in mitigation proceedings. The judge right at the end there asking what the perception Malema's legal team, as you heard, I've just posed this to our analyst, is painting when they allude that he discharged the firearm during celebrations and that it was not in fact linked to acts of violence. I guess that must have cleared up quite a lot of speculation from those that are following these proceedings. Good afternoon.
Indeed, Alicia, very good afternoon to you too. Well, the magistrate Janet Olefia didn't mention a word with regards to that. And clearly she's sticking to case law and what the Firearm Control Act means. And really it's quite something to ponder upon, whether it's in a celebratory manner or whether it was used in a violent manner, but it still remains that he did discharge that firearm on that day, whether it was planned or not, but he did discharge that firearm. And really, the social worker, J.C. Thompson, really had a hard time understanding, particularly when the magistrate was asking those questions, even though she has concluded now, but really she had a quite time.
Yes.
I'm afraid I have to leave. The magistrate has just stepped in.
All right, I'm going to leave it there with you, Abongile. Of course, I was just going to probe you further as to why we're actually seeing this adjournment. We understand that it's over, of course, the dates that needs to be agreed upon in terms of when the legal teams will be meeting. But I see everybody's getting back to their seats. So I suppose we will be taking you back to the East London Magistrates Court. Melusi, thank you so much for your time.